Thank you. Vicky Foxcroft.
Deputy Speaker, and it's an honour to follow the member for Ware Forest, who puts so passionately why we need to ensure that we have this bill. And there's such a huge amount that I could say on this subject, but in the brief time I have available, I would like to link the bill to two key areas of interest. Firstly, the importance of early intervention and a cross-departmental approach. This bill very much focuses on crisis intervention and criminal justice, and of course that is right, that immediate help for victims is a top priority. However, my work as chair of the Youth Violence Commission has highlighted time and time again that we need to intervene as early as possible if we are to break the cycle of violence. Domestic abuse charity Safe Wives has found anecdotal evidence of a strong crossover between domestic abuse and violence-affected young people. Practitioners state that when we speak to teenagers about healthy relationships, although important, it is already too late. We need to go back to not just primary schools, but nurseries, childhood centres and support for pregnant women. Colleagues may be familiar with the Adverse Childhood Experiences Framework, which treats traumatic childhood events as indicators of an increased likelihood of risky behaviour and certain illnesses in adulthood. Experiencing domestic violence is right on the top of the list. As we've already heard, it is therefore vital that children are properly recognised as experiencing abuse, not just witnessing it, and given priority access to support. Related to this is a need for a trauma-informed public health approach to tackling domestic violence. Domestic abuse cuts across multiple policy areas, and our response must incorporate not only health, housing and education, but also youth services, communities and local government. A full understanding of trauma and the impact it has on every part of a young person's life is vital if we are to provide early intervention. My second point relates to my brief as Shadow Minister for Disabled People. Office of National Statistics data demonstrated that disabled, deaf and blind women are at greater risk of gender-based violence. Domestic abuse among these groups is often perpetrated by those they rely on for care, and the barriers to escaping are often even greater. As Women's Aid highlight in their briefing for this debate, it can often take numerous attempts to leave because of the lack of understanding of disability within statutory and non-statutory organisations, a lack of information available in suitable formats, and poor provision of accessible refuge space. And I don't mind admitting that I was shocked when I read that during 2018-19, only 0.9% of refuge vacancies were in wheelchair accessible rooms, and a further 1% were suitable for someone with limited mobility. Now, I know that many organisations will be promoting amendments to this bill, but I'd like to briefly touch on two promoted by Stay Safe East. The first seeks to repeal the existing provisions of the Serious Crime Act 2015, which provides for a so-called carer's defence if the perpetrator can demonstrate that in controlling the victim, they were acting in his or her best interest. The defence is open to misinterpretation and particularly impacts on those who have or are perceived to have capacity issues. The second states that the bill should provide further protection for disabled people by broadening its definition of the relationships covered by domestic abuse to include both paid carers and non-family members working as unpaid carers. I am sure there are going to be so many other important amendments to be discussed in committee, and I very much hope to see that this bill is strengthened as it passes through its remaining stages. Thank you.
Thank you.